Hi everyone, this video is going to be a swatch and review video for Smashbox's Double Exposure palette. This palette is available through Sephora. It was first released exclusively to VIB members, and as of the day of filming, it is currently out of stock, I think because they are transitioning it to being available to everyone now. But I am filming this a couple of weeks before I'm publishing this video, so hopefully by the time this video is being seen by you, it will be back in stock at Sephora. I will put the link in the description box below, so just go check it out if you're interested in purchasing this. The palette is $52, and it comes in a heavy cardboard palette like this. It contains 14 shadows that, interestingly, are being explicitly advertised as working well under a damp brush also. So you are supposed to be able to get 28 different looks because you can use the 14 shades dry or wet. So there is a full-size mirror inside, which is great. As always, you also get a double-ended brush, and you get a miniature size of the full exposure mascara. Alright, as always, I will have a more in-depth written review after I've tested this palette fully at allurabeauty.com. Check the description below for that and to see photos of these swatches. I also have videos on a few other holiday edition palettes, including the NARS Virtual Domination palette and Too Faced Best Wishes and Sweet Kisses palette, so please go ahead and check those out if you are interested. And definitely check out my holiday gifting guide for all price ranges if you are having a little trouble deciding what to get in terms of beauty presents for the holiday season. Alright, let's get looking at swatches. So as usual, I will go left to right, starting with the first row of shadows and then going on to the second row. We have Silver, Peony, Mauve, Blanc, Quartz, Flushed, Veiled, Midnight, Temper, Haze, Noir, Copper, Fig, Espresso. And I said the packaging was made of heavy cardboard before, and it also has plastic on the packaging. So we start with Silver, which is a very interesting silver shade. It kind of has a blue or even lilac tone to it. It's almost like a duochromed finish. Next is Mauve, which is actually more of a purple than it is a reddish pink or mauve color. Next is Peony, which is this soft, slightly dusty pink. Next is Blanc, which is this off-white, again with a metallic or shimmering finish. Here we have Quartz, which is a soft goldeny peach. Again, lovely duochrome finish. Flushed is this rosy pink shade. And last up in the top row is Veiled, which has more of a satin finish, and it's this nudie cream color, light nude. Okay, so here's your top row of the first 7 shades. I love the consistency and finish of these colors. The formula goes on really, really buttery smooth on the skin. You get nice color and nice finishes to all of these shades. In the second row we have Midnight, which is this deep shimmering navy blue. Next is Temper, which is this pretty true purple shade, a hint of shimmer. Next is Haze, which is more of a slate purple, a lot lighter also. Noir is a matte black. Copper, which is more like a bronze, but it's definitely warm tone, so it has a red undertone to it. Fig, which is a matte, deep, almost maroony purple. I should say maroon brown. And last is Espresso. It's another warm toned medium brown. Okay, so there's your second row of 7 colors. I would say the matte shades here are just slightly more patchy, I guess, a little more stiff in the pan, but definitely nothing that can't be solved very quickly with a little bit of blending or layering. And again, same really nice formula, color payoff, and smoothness from the shades overall. So now we'll look at swatches of these shades applied with a damp brush, but before I do that, I just wanted to point out something that I see as really neat. Smashbox with this palette has actually given you this insert, and it clearly tells you up front that you can use them damp or dry, which is great, but for each shade, it also tells you not only the finish, which is really nice, but it tells you what applying the shadow damp is supposed to do in terms of changing the finish or the color, which I've never seen any other company do. I think that it's pretty helpful. Hopefully their suggestions or their predictions as to how the shadow will change hold true, but nonetheless I think it's a pretty neat idea. It also says on the bottom to not worry about applying them wet because they will dry like new. Sometimes when you try to use a shadow wet that isn't suitable for that, it totally ruins the top layer of the shadow. So I'm glad that they say this up front. Hopefully it is true, because especially for matte shadows, they usually do not perform very well when applied wet. So let's take a look. Okay, starting with silver, which is supposed to turn more metallic when you apply it wet, which I think is really true. It goes a little more taupe than the kind of hint of lilac or blue that we saw when applied dry. Next up is mauve. This is also supposed to turn more metallic. I think it's just a little more smooth in terms of the shimmer, but it's got a nice metallic finish as it is when it's applied dry. Peony is also supposed to turn more metallic. Again, I think the metallic nature is not changed so much, but it's more smooth on the surface. Blanc is supposed to turn more metallic. This one has the most dramatic change. Definitely becomes this very metallic, frosty, almost silver color. Quartz, the vibrancy is supposed to be amped up. I actually don't see that much of a difference with this shade when applied wet. Might have even been more vibrant when applied dry. Here's Flushed, which is supposed to get deeper in color, which I think it does just a little bit when applied wet. Veiled, applying wet is supposed to amp up the vibrancy, but I definitely think it is more opaque and a more solid layer of color when applied wet. When applied dry, although when applied wet it's a little deeper in color. Still a really nice finish, but I wouldn't exactly say the vibrancy is amped up. Alright, there is row 1 of the shades all applied with a damp brush. Applying Midnight Wet is supposed to add sparkle. This is the first one where I really think that applying it dry is much better, and definitely more shimmery when you apply it dry. Let's dab on a second layer here. It's much nicer with a second layer, so maybe it's just a matter of dabbing it on in smaller strokes, which often is the case when you're trying to use shadows with a damp brush. So much nicer, but still you're getting a little sort of these patches, and I don't know, I think it's much nicer and definitely simpler applied dry. Applying Temper Wet is also supposed to add sparkle. Again, I just think it's a lot prettier and definitely less work when you go straight from the pan and apply it dry. I'm going to do the same and add a second layer, just dabbing in short strokes. It's definitely more shimmery when applied dry also. Haze applied wet is supposed to make the shade deeper. I don't see that much of a deepening in the color, and again it gets more patchy, so I would stick with dry application for this one. Alright, we're going to try our first matte shade applied with a damp brush. This is Noir. It's supposed to get deeper, but as I suspected, all it does is make this a streaky mess, so unless maybe you were applying it just as a liner and really wanted to not deal with fallout, barring that, and even then, I think I would still just apply this dry. Copper is supposed to turn more metallic when applied wet. Again, I think it's a lot prettier and definitely more metallic when just applied simply dry. Fig is supposed to get deeper when applied wet, but again, the matte shadows don't perform well when applied wet. This is such a mess here. And last up is Espresso, which is also a matte, which should also probably just be kept to dry application. Okay, so a little disappointing if you were looking to apply these wet with the second row. Definitely the matte shades, stay far, far away from dampening your brush with those shades. The other shades, workable, but just not as impressive as they are when applied dry, so I wouldn't bother with those. Alright, there's a look into Smashbox's double exposure palette. If you were wondering whether you wanted to purchase this palette, I really hope that this swatch video was helpful to you. As for whether the pans hold up well to the wet application, I will continue to test them and use them and let you know more details in the written review. If that written review is already up by the time I post this video, it will be in the description box below. I hope you subscribe to this channel and give this a thumbs up if it was interesting to you or helpful to you. Thanks for taking the time to watch, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. So I do not use my fingers to blend it out. I use a stippling brush and one that is not densely packed. The same goes for the bronzer, although I did apply this with my fingers a few times and it turned out okay. Again, just putting a few dots on your fingers and just really massaging it into the places that you want a deeper tint of color.